Greetings, dear audience. This is Diplomatic Corner from Nahoo Television. This is a weekly program. Tonight I have a great distinguished diplomat. I'm honored to interview Madam Ambassador of the Republic of Finland. She is none other than Her Excellency Madam OUTI HOLOPAINEN. Welcome to my program.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. We are at the Finnish Embassy and at the office of Ambassador OUTI HOLOPAINEN. Madam Ambassador, thank you first for agreeing to be in my show.
It is definitely my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Madam Ambassador, you have been to, allow me to say a few words, you have been to Ethiopia since September 2020. And we have also met each other in different occasions, in different places. And I have seen your activity to bring, the two countries, to the two cultures, as well as in a formal way, the two sovereign governments together. And as a distant observer, I have noticed that. Let us start off with a basic information, and that is, I have come to know that you have been an ambassador before coming to Ethiopia, to Portugal and to Cape Verde. And before that, you have assumed very, very key positions. If you could enlighten us on your career, I would be very thankful.
Very good. So I'm a long-term diplomat. I could say that I have been in the diplomatic career all my adult life. So after graduating from the University of Helsinki as a Master of Law, I started in the diplomatic service of Finland. And actually I have done most of my career in security policy. Also disarmament, arms control issues, but very much security policy, also some other related issues. And then my postings abroad have been mostly in Europe. And as you mentioned, my previous ambassador posting was in Lisbon, in Portugal, from where I also covered Cape Verde. And so at the moment, I'm very happy to be the ambassador of Finland in Ethiopia, also covering Djibouti and South Sudan, African Union, UNECA, and IGAD.
Yeah, wonderful. Talking about African Union, dear audience, you are showing me African Union is in front of your office, and I was telling you, what a sight, because you represent the Finland Republic to the African Union.
Yes.
It's just a stone throws away from here,
yes.
and it has quite a view.
Yeah, it's quite a view.
Yeah.
I enjoy it every day.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, yes. You are also born in Stockholm, in Sweden, assuming key positions. You also focused on human rights policy on top of security and arms control and the like. So you have quite experience. Plus, if I say that you were also Inspector General at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland, that's a very key, high position, I would say.
Yeah, it's a very important position, and I was very honored to resume that. Of course, it also gives you a very good overview of your own organization. And of course, you see the challenges of your organization, but I also took it as a possibility to try to give my contribution to the development of my own organization. So I was trying to find the points for development, how we can do things better, how we can do things more effectively, whether our resources are at right places. So these were then the messages that I conveyed to the leadership of our ministry.
Great, great. How well is Your Excellency Finland represented in the African continent?
At the moment we have 13 embassies. We just opened the newest one last year in Dakar.
Oh,
so of course we are a small nation with only 5.5 million inhabitants. So compared to Ethiopia, it's small.
Yes,
but still we try to have a presence in different parts of Africa, and in some countries like Ethiopia we have a long tradition of cooperation.
Yes. Yes, and by the way, you say Finland is small, maybe small in population, but it's the happiest country in the world, and always you are number one, you know, even beating the Danes and the Iceland as number 3. So why, first and foremost, any comments on that? Is that really true?
Well, if you ask Finnish people, they have a hard, it's for many hard to believe that we would be the happiest country in the world. But if you think what is behind it, so of course we have a well-functioning society, and people have access to education, people have access to basic services, people rely on the institutions, there is not much corruption, people can, in a way they can trust that they can enjoy their full rights as the citizens, and also the equality is on a high level. So I think these are the elements that make it possible for people to have happy lives. Of course, not everybody is happy. Of course, we have people who have a hard life, who there is social exclusion, there is unemployment, sickness, all the problems that face humankind and the families. But compared to many other parts of the world, of course, we have been lucky to establish that kind of a society.
Yeah, absolutely. And while reading through books and also teaching European political systems, you know, Finland is known for, sharing of resources. The majority of the population have got a good, steady income. Yes. There is no big difference between rich and the poor. You
are definitely right, and you kind of you see it when you meet meet Finnish people, or when you visit Finland. Everything looks a bit like modest. We have no fancy palaces. We have nothing very fancy, but then on the other hand, we have no extreme poverty. So as you say, we have tried to do it like in a more equal way. Of course, there are differences, and people who really want to earn a lot of money and work hard for that, they are allowed to do that, and so on. But we also try to make sure that the poorest ones have something.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing, giving us a glimpse of Finland. Now, back to Ethiopia. My question will be, regarding bilateral relations. When was the bilateral relations started, and how was the diplomatic accreditation? And if you could give us highlights of that. Yes. Thank you.
Well, the diplomatic relations were established in 1959. And the embassy was established here in Addis for the first time in 1965. But then there were turbulent times with the Derg and so on. So at some point, the ambassador was moved to Nairobi, or the ambassador in Nairobi also covered Addis Ababa, and we had only like chargé d'affaires in Addis Ababa. But then in 2005, we had a then ambassador here in Addis Ababa again, and then since that we have had ambassadors. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. When one speaks about Finland, especially the Ethiopian youth, there is an association with one personality, one gentleman from Finland, and that brings me to Major Oni Nosken. He's the trainer of the late Abebe Bikila. I, even growing up as a little kid, when Abebe Bikila won in Rome and in Tokyo and others, we say, here is his, so there was pride, and he represented Finland. What do you feel when I share with you the feeling of Ethiopians, really?
Well, I'm very happy as ambassador to see that there have been and there still are close people-to-people relations between Ethiopia and Finland. It is not only the governmental relations or the business relations, but really people-to-people relations. And running has been one sector where we find this. And Onni Niskanen, who was born in Finland, he then later lived in Sweden, but then from Sweden came to Ethiopia. And as we have learned, so he has had quite an influential positions in Ethiopia, he is of course known as being the trainer for the famous legendary Abebe Bikila, but he had other positions as well. He was there to establish the Ethiopian Red Cross. He was there to help Ethiopia to bring forward its activities in the Olympic Committee. So I have found out later and read books about him and his influence in this country, and I'm very happy to hear that and know that there is this very personal link between our countries.
Indeed, indeed. I couldn't agree more, indeed. Talking about running, Madam Ambassador, it just came to know quite a short time ago that in front of me sits another marathon runner. Is that right?
That is right. Of course, we cannot talk about me and the Ethiopian marathon runners in the same sentence. Yeah. That is something completely different, and my huge admiration to the resilient, strong Ethiopian runners that have really conquered the world. Huge respect. But for me, running is a hobby. And that is something that I do to stay fit, both mentally and physically. And that is also something that I recommend to others. Of course, not everybody needs to run marathons, not everybody needs to run, but physical exercise is, as such, is, I think, very, very important for people. And for me, having a busy life, of course, running is a simple hobby because you don't need to fix any appointments in advance. You can just go and enjoy and run and then come back and feel like empowered.
Yeah, very true. And I feel really happy that from my encounters with different ambassadors stationed in Addis, you are the first marathon runner that have come across. And I wish you luck. And you have shared with me early on that in the next coming 2-3 weeks you have another marathon running coming. I wish you good luck in that.
Thank you.
Really.
It will be in Helsinki, and it will be my 45th marathon.
45th marathon.
Yes, yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Now, in the bilateral relations with Finland, really, it is very broad. There is this education, of course, culture, and economy, and we have even, talking about water engineering and etc. You have Finland had played a significant role in the development of this discipline in Ethiopia, which has to this day continued. And even one of our former prime ministers, like the former Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn, was one of your beneficiaries, I would say. So if you could comment on that, on future plans about education relations.
Yeah, maybe I can say a few words about the past first. And so really, like the bilateral cooperation between Finland and Ethiopia dates back to the 60s. And since that, there has been a lot of activities, cooperation in some specific sectors. We can take like the water sector. That has been one and still is a strong sector. So especially Finland focuses on promoting the access of fresh water, clean water in the rural communities, and that is a focus area still. And then we have been active in the rural development more broadly, and education, of course, is always very close to our hearts. And I would say that it is also from our own experience that we see the role of education in developing societies, and we think that we would never in Finland we would not have become such a prosperous welfare society without inclusive education, without giving the access to education to everybody, poor and rich and urban and rural children. So that is the cornerstone of building functioning societies, and that's why we also want to promote education, equal education in different countries. So these are major areas, but we also see that we want to do more and more also, like we want to encourage business relations between our countries, and we have some very visible examples of that already. And then, of course, the normal political relations and also our cooperation between Finland and Ethiopia in multilateral issues.
True. If I could get back to the economic aspect, Ethiopia has now opened up, so to speak, in privatization, opening up opportunities for European investors, Finnish investors in the European Union to come here and to invest. Do we have any cases where Finnish business have shown interest to come in to invest in Ethiopia?
Yeah, there is definitely interest because the potential is huge in this country, of course, and the opportunities. And we have been a lot in contact with also like smaller and medium-sized enterprises recently, startups even. But let's say the most visible examples at the moment are Nokia, which has contributed by building the part of the network of Safaricom services. And then another very visible and useful investment from the Finnish side is in the meteorological field. A Finnish company, Vaisala, is building new, let's say, upgrading the meteorological infrastructure in Ethiopia, and there is a cooperation between the meteorological institutes of Finland and Ethiopia, so that there will be like more modern technology and more capabilities in Ethiopia to forecast and address especially the extreme weather phenomena. So that should also help to predict the floods, and that will be, of course, very like central in addressing the climate change.
And very helpful
as well.
To predict the weather.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Finland is one of those unique countries in the world. All countries are sovereign, etc. And to this day, I would say Switzerland is another country, Finland is another country, where there is the whole foreign policy rests upon the principle of neutrality, things like that. I know that Finland became a European Union member in January 1st, 1995, and very active actually, very active in that. And now, there is a policy change, and now Finland is a member of NATO, brand new member. And Finland is the 31st NATO member as well. So what brought this change? If I could hear it from the horse's mouth, from the ambassador herself, I would be honored.
Yeah, I will be happy to explain. Of course, I can also first mention that by the time we joined European Union, we regarded ourselves as no more neutral. We referred to ourselves as militarily non-aligned, but we thought that when we are part of European Union that has a very solid common foreign and security policy, so we are already in a way, we have kind of lost the original neutral position in the world. But we were still militarily non-aligned, and we thought that that role fits us well. Our position is very unique in that sense that we are in the north, quite far from Ethiopia, and we are surrounded on the other side by the Scandinavian countries, Sweden and Norway, which are our close friends, and then on the other side of Russia. And we share a border of 1,300 kilometers with Russia. And we have had a solid role there, building very good relationships in different directions. And we also have had a good relationship with Russia, including in business relations, infrastructure, rapid train connections, a lot of cooperation in environmental issues, of course, because we share cross-border, and so be it nuclear safety issues and so on. But of course, what happened in February last year, that was a shock. So our neighboring country invading another sovereign country, Ukraine. And in that moment, many things really changed in Europe. So the whole European security architecture that we have been building after the Second World War, that lost its foundations. And that was a really big shock, as I said, but also made us really rethink our security policy positioning. And our conclusion was that since we want to invest in our security, we have to do some changes. And this made us apply for NATO membership, which then materialized just a few weeks ago. It is a big change. It opens a new chapter in our history, definitely. And so now we are militarily allied with other NATO members. But I can assure you that we don't think, we count that our foreign policy does not change. So we still will want to be like the bridge builder. Mm-hmm. We want to contribute to the peace in our neighborhood, but also like more broadly in the world. So we usually say that we want to be a provider of peace, not a consumer of peace, and that will remain. So our foreign policy, like the cornerstones of our foreign policy, will remain the same.
Mm-hmm. Very quite interesting. Yes, there is a new chapter being opened. You know, OSCE. And of course the Helsinki 1975 agreement, all these are security protocols, arrangements that one lived through in Europe in the Cold War period, etc.
And it has also been a big disappointment that this has failed. This security framework that was meant to rely on cooperation. When you completely lose the trust in one partner in the cooperation, you cannot continue in the same way. And a war of aggression of Russia really made us change the thinking.
Would it worry Finland? Now it means Finland is now member of NATO, so it means sort of the border has come closer to the Russian Federation. If on the Russian side, if they begin to deploy, let's say, nuclear weapons and the like, would it worry Finland very much? Of course, you have the protection of NATO. I mean, that means bringing the whole thing closer to you. Yeah.
I think we all have to be extremely worried. These are the first times after the World War II that the use of nuclear weapons is even mentioned. There were decades, even the decades of the Cold War, and then afterwards, that we really thought that that time is over and that we can concentrate on the nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation and so on. But now we really, several times we already have heard from Moscow the reference to the nuclear weapons, and that is really worrying, and I think that should be the concern of the whole world.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this new development to our audience. Now let's move next to, Finland, its engagement with African states. Really, Ethiopia is one country among 54 plus 55 countries. So many African countries. And how do you see Finland's engagement with African states?
Let me start by looking at Finland as part of European Union. So of course, for us in Europe, Africa is the neighbor. True. And there are a lot of connections in many ways. And we really value Africa as our neighbor. In Finland particularly, in the recent years, there has been quite a lot of interest, new interest towards Africa. Towards Africa as a business destination, towards Africa as for the exchange of students, for doing things commonly when we try to address our shared challenges like the climate change and so on. So there is a lot of interest, and I would say that it is more and more in economic and political relations. But of course in Finland we very much cherish these contacts in academic level, as we talked about, also the prominent figures of Ethiopia who have studied in Finland. So we see a lot of possibilities in academic field, but also people-to-people relations. So a new kind of a interest towards increasing and diversifying the contacts. But we also see that really the challenges of our time are of such dimension that we need everybody to solve those. Security issues, yes, but also the climate change, the pandemic, health challenges. So we cannot do without Africa and active Africa. So we really want to cooperate with Africa in addressing the challenges and, for example, in working together in United Nations. And I can also mention that Finland is one of the countries that really supports a more active role of Africa in the United Nations and the strengthening of African participation in the Security Council.
If I continue on that, there is a talk and debate going on to expand, different formats are being discussed to expand the membership, shall I say, of the United Nations non-permanent member seats. Is that right, maybe?
Well, we have to see. Is
Finland supportive of that, maybe?
Yes, we are supportive, and of course we think that Africa, with all this, the number of nations and the number of population,
1.4 billion people.
It has to be represented in New York properly.
Yes, it goes without saying. Germany will be there, Japan will be there, and Brazil will be there in the expanded new Security Council.
So we will see what the final setup will
how
be.
It will look
but
like.
in generally, of course, reform is needed, and then we also need to work to maintain the credibility of United Nations after what has happened in Ukraine. We have seen how the UN Charter has been breached by a permanent member of the Security Council. So there is a lot to do also to maintain and secure the position of United Nations, because without it, I think we all have a big trouble.
I see. Good, thank you. Now, African countries are developing countries. In terms of economic performance, there are green lights coming in. Ethiopia is one of them. At least there is this, despite political hiccups here and there, economic progress and the like. But still, African societies across the continent, they struggle. On what pillars does the Finnish economic assistance, economic aid rest upon?
Well, it is more or less those sectors that I already mentioned in the context of Ethiopia, education always at the core, but also institutions building. So in order for the states to really develop, let's say, like their tax collection systems and so on, you need solid institutions. And that is then one way to really develop the countries and ensure that the countries can then be self-sustained and use their own finances for the further development.
So knowledge transfer, so institutional support.
Institutional support, yes. And then, of course, through business also the technological innovations concerning sustainable ways for energy, for traffic, because of course it can be a challenge in a short period of time, but in a longer term, I don't think Africa should make the same mistakes that have been made in some other parts of the world, so that you will end up being in the middle of pollution and ruining your wonderful nature, which also has the huge potential for tourism. So maybe trying to take some leaps with the help of the new technology, so that you can just really go to the next level. And I would really advise you here in Ethiopia to take care of your beautiful nature and the variety of it, and not spoil it in some like short term businesses, but make sure that the tourists for decades to come can enjoy the country.
Very true. You mean in a way alternative sources of energy, using that solar energy.
I think we all are working
Yes.
very much on that. Yes.
Yes, very true. And that's what Africa needs, the technology from advanced societies, countries like Finland, like Africa is rich, abundant sunshine, thermal energy is another.
Yes.
And wind
Potential,
energy is
wonderful
another, the
potential,
potential.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
true. These are
Yeah.
wise, but it needs capital, it needs technology transfer, and that's what African societies need. Finland and other European
Yes.
Union countries.
Yeah. And then, of course, digitalization, because
Yeah. the
the world is becoming
Yes.
digital.
Yeah,
It has some challenges, but it also creates wonderful opportunities. And yes, European Union as a whole is working very much on supporting Africa on taking these leaps.
Very true. Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Next, it will take me to, among the challenges of Africa is hunger is one, not being able to feed one's population, and the climate degradation of the soil, agricultural land is another, etc. And one is in your field of study and specialization is peace and security. Terrorism has become a challenge in Africa, Even here in the Horn, we have Al-Shabaab, the Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State chapters are here operating in this part of, especially in Somalia. So Ethiopia with the Horn, with IGAD countries are fighting back. In the western side, like Mali, like G5 and the Sahel zone, there are also such terrorist groups are very active now. That is at the cost of instability of peace and security. With that in mind, then, what is the policy of Finnish foreign policy in fighting terrorism, as well as in establishing partnerships with sovereign countries like Africa?
First of all, I can say that Finland condemns terrorism in all its forms, and it is definitely our common concern, and we have, of course, our own experiences in Europe as well about terrorism and attacks. And like one concrete thing that Finland as a country is doing is contributing to international crisis management operations, be it military operations or be it civilian operations, but in operations that in a short term try to address this phenomena. But then I would say that in the longer term, what is needed is exactly this functioning societies. You started by talking about the poverty, so addressing the poverty and equality issues. So it will be, of course, a longer term process to help the societies to build such foundations that the terrorism doesn't really
grow.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Thank you. Now, continuing on that line, you are also representing Finland in the African Union. Among the challenges of African continent, we have said peace and security is one, and the African Union has now the PSC, the Peace and Security Council. It's tries to be active, and it's active. You are the permanent representative there. First, what are your activities in the AU?
Well, bilaterally, as Finland, our activities are really a lot focused on peace and security. So we have a long-term partnership with African Union Department for Peace and Security, and there our main focus is in building African Union capacities for better preventing conflicts and also addressing conflicts through peace mediation. So this has been at the core of our direct cooperation with African Union, and we also, of course, always underline the inclusion of women and youth in the peace processes. So this is one solid program that we have with African Union. But we are also very interested, for example, in the promotion on African free trade area. So the AFCFTA agreement has a huge potential for this continent. And since we have seen in Europe the benefits of integration, political integration, economic integration, so we would really want to see the same happening here, and the African countries, but also the African citizens, people here on this continent, to profiting from further integration.
Very true. Talking about that, Madam Ambassador, Africans, among Africans, between African government, between African business, it's less than 20% when we trade with each other. More of our trade is with European countries, former colonial mother countries and the like. So yes, that's very, very correct. Africa needs to grow and develop one's own free trade area like the Europeans have done in the 50s and 60s.
Yes, and that is also one way to attract investments from Europe, for example, because when the investors know that there is a bigger market, integrated market, it really adds to the attraction.
Very true, very true. And that's where the future is. And Africa, if it wants to have its weight felt in the world and to develop as well, one needs to create a market right here in the African continent and then connect it with the outside world.
Yeah, and as a whole, I can say when we are talking about African Union that from the Finnish perspective and from the European perspective, we looked at African Union with great interest and also with some expectations, because you have the institution. African Union has a very solid policy framework, legal framework. So when that all will be implemented, so that creates a lot of good for Africa.
Yeah, I agree. You mean if you could add Agenda 2063, exactly. Setting a goal, not per se setting a goal by itself will not bring anything. It should be based on determination, persistence, and pushing the agenda as well. In that respect, one of the predicaments of the African Union is finance, I believe, and Finland and other European countries are committed to, sort of gently prop up, this continental institution, and I believe Finland makes a good contribution in that. Am I right, Madam Ambassador?
Yes, we do it through the European Union. So mainly it is EU money that is part of African Union's budget, and it is quite a substantial part of the African Union budget. So of course that adds to our interest as well to see what then happens with on the basis of this financial contribution.
Very true. Now let's move to women and girls. When one talks about women and girls, I mean, which country can we best bring as an example, except the Scandinavian countries? Always trendsetters when it comes to women representation, even in public offices and everywhere, and even giving women the right to vote. One of these key countries is Finland. Before the USA, before other countries, mainland European countries even, there is this tradition of giving equality to women, even at the formal and the real power level, presidents. In America, to this day, we don't have not yet a woman president. Of course, we had one a bit close up, with Hillary Clinton. What's the magic, or what's the real reason behind that?
Yeah, unfortunately, no magic, but hard work, I would say. Well, of course, we were lucky that in the early days of the Finnish nation's history, actually already a few years before our independence, the idea of giving the women full political rights was materialized. So not even only like the right to vote, but also the right to stand as candidates. And when the first parliamentary election took place then 100 years ago, a little more than 100 years ago. So right away, so several women were elected to the parliament. And when you have women in the parliament, of course, they have then the opportunity to have the influence and influence the legislation. And so it started. And of course, it has been a long road, and winding road, and nothing is perfect, I can say. So nothing is perfect, and there are still challenges. But yes, we have come far, and as you have noticed in the news in the recent years, so we have had a female prime minister, and at the same time, in our coalition government, all the women that were leaders of their parties, or all the leaders of the major parties were women, and I would say that this is also a Finnish. This can happen in Finland, that during the term of government, several female ministers had their maternity leave. So we had young women in the government, but they were allowed to have like the maternity leave and then come back to the government. And I think this is really like breaking the glass ceiling. So if ministers can do it, the government ministers, so why wouldn't the businesses or private sector or anybody else, why wouldn't they allow their female workers to work in that way? And also with respect of combining work and family, there is a new legislation in Finland that divides more equally the parental leaves between mothers and fathers, so that fathers also take more responsibility for the family, but also then when we talk from the employer's perspective, it can be a female worker or a male worker that then has the parental leaves, so that kind of makes it more equal in that sense as well.
Okay, thank you. And I do hope and pray some little girl or some young lady, university student or a graduate student would listen to what you say now in Ethiopia. We do hope and aspire.
Yes, we hope that.
Yes, we do hope and aspire and cross our fingers. Someday in Ethiopia, we already have a president.
Yes.
That's a big push forward.
Yeah. And I would say that it is in any society, it is easier to change the legislation, but it takes a longer time to change the attitudes. So it takes a lot of work and inspirement from elsewhere to really change the attitudes, so that people really believe that girls can do the same things as boys.
Very true, very true. Great. Now, so far for gender equality, girls and women, the best model that we have is Finland and other Scandinavian countries. Now you are here in Ethiopia, and I assume you travel a lot as representing the Finnish Republic. Where have you been so far, Madam Ambassador?
Do you mean in
Ethiopia?
Yes. In Ethiopia, well, I have been in the north and in the east and in the south and
everywhere.
So everywhere. Of course, the times have been turbulent, and it has been also a bit. There have been some challenges in traveling for security reasons, but also due to our cooperation projects. So I have been doing work-related travels and seeing what it means in practice, that we have projects and how Finnish and Ethiopian partners work together and what the results are. So that is really important for me as ambassador. But of course, also on personal level, it has been fascinating to see the diversity in this country. Simply fascinating, and there would be so much to see.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yes, it's a great opportunity as well, you know. Yes, I mean, even for us all Ethiopians, you know, seeing is believing. You know, this is a great nation with a whole lot of history, and I agree on what you said. I have seen you love to interact with people, and. Do you like Ethiopian culture, Ethiopian food, if I may ask you?
Oh, bunna.
Oh, yeah, bunna. Okay.
Yes, yes, yeah. Of course. And I like Ethiopian food. Really, injera with chiro is my favorite. And of course, I have seen that Ethiopian people are really generous. Also, when I travel in the countryside, and I know that people are from very modest backgrounds and conditions, but still they want to, when they have a guest, they really want to take care and be sure that the guest is happy, and that's really, I value that a lot.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, very true. You speak a number of languages, and any try to acquire some Ethiopian basic Amharic language or something?
Yes, I have taken some lessons. I have had a very nice teacher who has been teaching me not only the language as such, but also about the culture, because those of course go hand in hand. So that has been really useful. Unfortunately, I cannot be interviewed in Amharic, but of course it helps me to understand some things when I move around and say maybe some polite words when I'm with people. And I think it is, for me, it's a very nice part of living abroad, is also to try to learn some of the language and of course the culture.
Great, thank you. When I was looking at your bio, your CV, I was really fascinated and by the following, in that you are a woman ambassador, and definitely gender equality. You have so many women ambassadors, I assume, across the world.
About half of our ambassadors.
Yes, 50-50 or something like that. Yeah. And then I see that you are a mom. You are a marathon runner. We have already discussed that. And you are a mother of 5 children. Yeah, if you could share with us your personal family, that will be great.
Well, I consider myself being extremely lucky, so that I was not forced to choose between career and family. So I was able to have it like both. And in Finland, it is typical. It is because, let's say, about all women also have they work outside of home. It's normal in Finland, but also it is very normal in Finland to combine family and work. It is, of course, it is a bit exceptional in Finland also that the ambassador, female ambassador, has 5 children. But this was
good. This
is mine and my husband's choice to have that kind of family. But of course there are many Finnish.
Your Excellency, if I may interrupt you, with tons of apologies, in Ethiopia we'll say you are rich.
Yes.
When you have 5 children, you say you are rich, not in terms of finance, but in terms of this gift of life, So you are a rich person, a rich mother in Ethiopia, by the way.
Yes. Yes, that's how I see it as well. So I am happy. I am also happy that I have been able, and we have, together with my husband, we have been able to show our children also like different realities in the world, so that they understand better that not everything is elsewhere as it is in Finland. We very recently had a family visit from Helsinki here, because our adult children, they live in Helsinki. So our 2 children just visited us here, and they were very happy to see Addis Ababa and how we live here, and learn a lot about the life here, the history of Ethiopia, the culture of Ethiopia.
Yeah. Any one of those kids, young adult children, joining the diplomatic corps maybe in Finland? Any inclination like mother?
So far no, but I think that for the young generation the world is very international anyway. The way they work and are online, and they do their exchange programs, so I think they have grown up to be international anyway, and they don't mind being faced with other cultures. On the contrary, they see it as a richness to meet people from other countries and other backgrounds as well.
Finland has, I have read, and it is true, had secured this future, with nature endowed wealth. You have created work, you have created wealth in Finland, and you have created really from birth from cradle to death, sort of really an Ethiopian society, very, very attentive and very near to people's, changing people's life, giving them a chance and everything, you know. So in that respect, when you see that, so many countries envy you. Is there anything that one can take from the African continent to Finland that might be missing in Finland? What do you think, if there is something?
Yes, definitely there is something. Let me first say that yes, we have a good society, and we have been able to develop many things in Finland, but still I would say that we cannot take anything for granted. We are, as we see, the world is in a flux, and we had COVID-19. It hit us as it hit other countries, so we had to close down. People were suffering, and we didn't know how to handle it. People stuck in their homes, and of course, unfortunately, also many people died. So it really hit us, and we don't know where the next challenges are. Now we have the security challenge in Europe because of the aggression of Russia. We don't know what comes next, so we really have to work on maintaining our society and the security and stability in our neighborhood. So really we cannot take anything for granted, and sometimes we are really concerned about the next generations, whether their lives will be as good as ours in Finland. But yes, there are definitely also things that we can take from Ethiopia, and I have said this to many interlocutors when I have been talking about peace and stability in this country, and you have been able to preserve some of the traditional ways of dealing with conflicts, and the systems of elders, and the mediation in the local communities. I think we should have more of that in Finland. We very easily just refer all problems to the authorities, but we could also do more in our informal settings and in the neighborhoods, in the communities, and so on. So that is, I think, one concrete example.
In a very traditional way.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. A great point, absolutely. Great personalities from Finland. One of them was UN Security General, yeah?
We haven't had the...
He was a Swede, yeah.
Yes, we haven't had the Secretary General. We had one very prominent personality, Martti Ahtisaari, who was like the deputy secretary, assistant secretary general, and he was also there to then assist with the independence process of Namibia. And he later became our president and Nobel Peace laureate.
Peace laureate, yeah. Yes, indeed, Your Excellency, Madam Ambassador, traditional forms of resolving problems and issues within families, within a community, still has a place, a role to play, and thank you for sharing that. You know, that cannot be replaced by sometimes with advanced economic development and the like. Thank you. There are a number of prominent Finnish personalities in the world at the international fora that had that have put their footprints. One of them is Martti Ahtisaari, you know, and there might be others as well, and that's what Finland is known for. Another second part of this question is, if you could care to comment on that. Another is, Finland, I have come to know, you know, among countries, people love music, and you love music, I'm sure, Madam Ambassador. Why is Finland known for loving heavy metal, you know? That is very unique. If you could care, I'm glad to see you laugh, you know.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Maybe I start with His Excellency Martti Ahtisaari. So he served as Assistant Secretary General for United Nations, and he has a very close link to Africa because during his term, so he was there very actively engaged in helping Namibia in its independence process. So against that background, there still is a very special relationship between Finland and Namibia. And Martti Ahtisaari then later also he became the Nobel Peace Laureate, and for the rest of his career he has worked very actively for peace and stability in the world. He has established his own foundation, which is also now working as a partner of the foreign ministry.
And he became the president of
he became also
Finland.
the president,
Your president
of Finland.
yeah.
Yes, exactly.
A great personality,
yes.
a well-known personality
Yes.
in the international arena. Yeah.
Exactly.
How about the heavy metal part?
Oh, this is a good question. yes, and I can say that I like many types
Kinds
of
of
music.
music.
Maybe heavy metal is not the one and only among it.
Yeah.
I don't know what is behind it, but I know that Finland is famous for its heavy metal music, and it is a funny curiosity also about Finland. Maybe it's about our dark winters when you really need something to empower you, and I cannot give a better explanation, no scientific explanation at least.
Maybe to get to push back the darkness
maybe
of these 5-6 months of darkness maybe. Sometimes.
It is quite tough in Finland. The changes of seasons are very clear. So when it is summer in Finland, it is very light. So the sunlight is there almost all the time. So that the sun hardly sets, and in the parts of Finland the sun doesn't even go down for 2 months. So there is daylight all the time. But the winter is the opposite. So there are parts in Finland where the sun doesn't even come up in the morning for 2 months. And also in Helsinki and in the southern part of Finland where most of the population live, it is more or less dark for a couple of months. So it is quite tough on Finnish people, and you need to find ways to really survive.
Wow, I think that's a good outlet, energy outlet, and a sort of push. Yeah. Thank you for your really humble and down-to-earth response. Finland, Suomi. What's the relation between the two words? Suomi, the interchangeably it's used. For our audience, if you could say a few words on that.
Suomi is the name of the country in Finnish language.
Yes.
And Finland is then the name of the country in most other languages. But Suomi, that is Finnish language.
Suomi, the Finnish language. Officially Suomi.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. My last question, we have to wrap it up. You are busy. My last question will be to ask you: is there anything else you'd like to add when you wrap the interview?
Oh, of course. As the ambassador of Finland, but also as a Finnish citizen who has had the opportunity to learn a lot about Ethiopia. Of course, I hope that there will be good relationship between our country and good relationship between our citizens also in the future, and so that we can share and we can also work together to address the problems of this world. At the end, we are in the same boat anyway.
Very true.
And I really wish all the best to Ethiopia with its development challenges. The way has been very much forward. Now, unfortunately, due to COVID and conflicts, there have been some like setbacks. But I hope that the path towards development and peace and security will continue. That after some years, children will be
when
in
you come
school,
back 10, 20 years from now, hopefully.
That children will be in school, and there will be decent jobs for the huge young population.
True.
And I wish all the happiness to the Ethiopian people.
Thank you so much. Really, it's good to hear that and to finish the interview on that note. There is no predicament. As long as Ethiopians work, set an objective, set a target, work together, pool resources together, definitely societies would change. And Ethiopia is no exception. Due to our own sweat, our own backs, breaking our backs, Ethiopia would achieve something. And I'm sure, hopefully, with the grace of God as well, in 20 years' time, we'll see tremendous change in Ethiopia. And thank you, and hope you'll visit us again. Hope you'll come back again to Ethiopia. Madam Ambassador, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For your straightforward answers, with your charm and with your humility. I really appreciate the time that you have given me. Allow me to thank you on behalf of my audience. And we are a global TV, Nahoo TV. The Ethiopian diaspora, everywhere they live, especially in America, it's a big number. They watch us and they follow us. and I'm sure they will find your interview very insightful and very interesting, Madam Ambassador. Thank you, Madam Ambassador OUTI HOLOPAINEN. Thank you for your time. Hope to see you on another occasion, hopefully. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, that was Her Excellency the Ambassador of Finland, Madam Ambassador OUTI HOLOPAINEN, and she is the Ambassador of the Republic of Finland to Ethiopia, and she's the permanent representative to the African Union. On top of that, she's the non-resident Ambassador of Finland to South Sudan and to Djibouti. Hope you like our interview with her. Until I bring to you next time another high-profile diplomat in our program. It's me, Professor Brooke Hailubesha from Nahoo TV. I'm the producer and director of Diplomatic Corner. Until I see you next time, I say au revoir. See you soon. Thank you for watching us and keep on watching us. Thank you.